Happy today. I am William Brown from IamWilliamBrown.com. This is Disconnect to Connect One Word Conversations. One Word Conversations is a self-discovery, relationship building conversation designed to invite you to look at your language. Many times we come up with all the lovely words that we can think of and still find ourselves in a place of disconnection. Well, what I invite you to do is to have a one-word conversation where you can learn a little bit more about yourself, the person that you're speaking with, and just maybe strengthen your relationship. One More Conversation is brought to you by IamWilliamBrown.com, a place to help you be yourself and live your life. One way that I spotlight what's available at the I Am William Brown store is our U cards. Our U cards are intention setting cards and journal prompts and also a game. And they're a part of the Beyond the Shell series that include a couple of children's books, Finding You Beyond What Protects You in the Journey to Stay You, and the Hello, You Are Complete journal, to really give you access to understanding your completeness. So here are the words, or here are the cards that I picked for today. It's I am heard, you are lovable, and there is no one youer than you. So this is the moment where I invite you to like, share, comment, ask questions, do all those things to let me know that you are also a part of this conversation. So today's word is tolerate. And so it's interesting, the energy of that word, that when that came up, I was reminded of a saying that I learned a couple years ago, that you are what you tolerate. At the time, I believe that was the case, but it doesn't show up for me that way anymore. I think we become what we tolerate. I think that sounds more truer to me. But as I do, I don't have this conversation by myself. I invite a guest in so we can have a conversation. Happy today.
Hi, William. How are you?
I am doing great. This is the moment where I invite my guests to introduce themselves however it feels comfortable to them.
Awesome. Well, I am Jess Wass. I am a career coach, an organizational development consultant, a speaker, educator. Essentially, I like to work with individuals and companies to embrace this idea of achieving with intention. So, with individuals, I'll help them craft intentional career paths. And with organizations, I'll help them cultivate a people centric work culture. But really, I just love the intersection of psychology and business. And how do we show up as our full selves? And how do we create environments where people can thrive?
Oh, wonderful. Well, welcome to the conversation. So, as I introduce our word, tolerate, how does tolerate land for you?
Tolerate. I feel like there's so many different ways we could take this conversation. And I don't know if you mentioned it, but I asked for the word in advance. Sometimes William likes to surprise people, but I just wanted to gather my thoughts so that I could, create some structure, some coherence to it.
Right.
And because of this word, I still couldn't create any structure, even if I thought about it in advance. Because it's just, okay, where do we begin? So maybe to just orient us, I started thinking about, okay, well, what is the actual definition of tolerate? Right. And so I looked it up in the dictionary, and in both versions of the definition, it's really implying that you are putting up with something that you don't like. So it's an acknowledgement that there's something that you don't like or agree with, or it's unpleasant in some way, but you're exhibiting some sort of self-control to just go with it. And so I think for me, the first thing that always comes to mind is, well, if you don't like something, why are you doing it? So it's this question of like, why are we tolerating it? That's where my mind went first.
Yeah, I totally get that. And it's like there is a large part of my life when I think of tolerate, especially around that, you are what you tolerate, that I don't know if you've ever heard that
Hmm.
before, but it's like, why am I tolerating this? How did I become what am I tolerating? Right. It's like,
Hmm.
and it's because of what social norms and just family. There's just so many things that it's like there is this state of deal with it.
Yeah.
And it creates this less than life for me that we and sometimes it feels like I can't show up fully as myself. I can't really enjoy the desires of my heart because there is so much of my life that I just feel that I just need to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a tension there, right? I'm thinking, I just recently had a few different coaching calls with clients. Um, but one of them, we started talking about this idea of, well, do you just accept, like, if you accepted the way things were,
Right.
would you remove that tension that you feel? Right? Because if every day you're going in and you're actively feeling that discontent, right?
Right.
That tension between, I don't like this, I don't believe in it, then it becomes really hard to tolerate and to move forward.
Right.
But if you don't have any control over those things that you don't like, then what do you really do about it, right? You're just sort of living in like a very active negative state.
Right.
So I started exploring with the client, okay, well, what are our options here, right? One is like, you can decide you don't want to tolerate this, right? And leave
Right.
if you can. It's not
Right.
always an option, right? Or what would happen if you just accepted, there's that saying like, accept the things that we cannot change or
Right.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I was like, what would that look like? And what is in your control? And I don't know if that's helpful or not. But that
Right.
that was one sort of tension that I started to feel, which is if we're in a situation, we don't like it, but we just keep focusing on it, but we can't do anything about it. Does that serve us?
Right. It's kind of, as you were sharing that, because I've been in a number of, job situations that, I tolerated because of, me being the only person working outside of the home. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm the responsible one. So I'll just kind of, like I said before, deal with it, and just, build up this, higher level of tolerance, right?
Hmm.
It's that. Um, but there was that external, there's this
Hmm.
external tolerance and there's this internal tolerance. And it's
Hmm.
usually when I look at what I am tolerating internally, myself,
Hmm.
is it is not good. It's like something that I don't like the definition. But
Hmm.
externally, how I would use it, that if I would say, Jess, I tolerate you. It's like a bad badge of honor, right? It's like, yeah, you're crazy, but I tolerate you, so I'm a
Hmm.
good person for tolerating you. And it's just like
Right.
that's just kind of like
Well,
wrong,
then
I
I
think.
think, are you tolerating me or are you accepting me for who I am, flaws and all?
Right. And I don't think I was accepting people. It was just like, yeah, I'll tolerate you because I have to, right?
Right. Well, that
Or
goes
something
back to
like the
the
feeling, right?
why, right? So
Right.
what are you
Mm,
like, why are you tolerating this? Like, what are you getting out of it?
right.
And and then it also goes to, I think the other consideration, I keep coming up with this idea of like your values. Like
Right.
what is most important to you? And that will help you decide, can you tolerate this?
Right.
Right. Because there have been many situations where I've worked in companies where at first it was, can I tolerate this? And okay. And then it got to a point where I was like, no, I can't tolerate this because I think it violates some of my fundamental values at a core level.
Right.
And it's more important to me to feel like I'm standing up for what is right or saying something against an injustice, even if it means that I may no longer be able to work here as a result of that.
Right. I wonder if it's like there's a tolerate spectrum, right?
Hmm.
It's there is a point where okay, at a 1, I can tolerate this on this level, right? That
Mhm.
it's okay. And then does it get closer to your values, or putting your values and to, it's like, then it's a 5, and now it's not, it's okay. No, now I can't tolerate. This is,
Right. I think
there
your values are probably underlining it,
is
right?
underlining that, right?
Yeah, and so it's like maybe it's like your values sit underneath, and so that spectrum is how far does this violate my values, right? Because
Right,
if I valued harmony,
right,
right, and there's many reasons, many people value harmony, right? They don't like conflict, they want things to feel comfortable, they don't like people fighting, right? They don't want to cause a hullabaloo. So if they
right,
value harmony,
right,
then when you're in a situation where you don't necessarily agree with something, you're not going to rock the boat because it's more important that there's this perception that everything's okay, right? Or that like I'm not creating conflict.
right,
And so your tolerance for that same action may be higher than mine if I'm tolerate if my value is something else, like
right,
there's an injustice here. And that's like so fundamental to who I am. I fight injustices.
right,
It's so important to me. I can't look the other way.
right. I think what just came up for me
Yeah.
within that is, what we tolerate, or what I
Mhm.
tolerate, is an indication of my relationship, with my values and to my values. And it's like, sometimes I can say that this is what I value, but if that doesn't show up in my life, right?
Mhm.
Then it's like, well, that's not really your values. That's not really my values.
Mhm.
And I need to understand that. So, and I think, going back to, you are, or you become what you tolerate, is that disconnect from your values, right?
Mhm.
It is like an organization, um, you've probably seen this, that an organization will have the mission and vision on the wall, but it's not
Mhm.
showing up anywhere in their operation. They are disconnected from what they say they values,
Mhm.
what their values are. And so there's a lot of things within that organizational culture that is tolerated, right?
Right. But it's because they're actually valuing something else that they
Right.
haven't named,
That
right?
is not
Because
on
if
the
you
wall,
put
right?
right, if you put it on the wall, you said that's important, but you're not doing anything about behaviors that are antithesis to that. It's because you're valuing something else, right? Or
Right.
you may be valuing profit, right? So I don't really want to do that because it may affect your bottom line. Or they're valuing, the feelings of some people over others, right?
Right.
But they're clearly valuing something else. I always talk about values as this invisible hand.
Right.
Sort of similar, I think, like Carl Jung talks about this a little bit. It's the unconscious, right? It's this invisible hand that is constantly guiding us, and I think influencing how we perceive the world. But I call it the invisible hand because most people haven't thought about or named their values. So they're feeling things, but they can't put their finger on it, right? So they don't know
Right.
why exactly they're tolerating this or why
Right.
they don't want to do anything about it. But it's because they're valuing something that makes it more, optimal to sit here because
Right.
they think that the action is going to violate something else that feels more, um, important to them.
Right. It's I think there's a part of me that something just came up, this the inquiry of, the concept of, what's in our, I guess, the news, and I guess in our society right now, of,
Mhm.
cancel culture, and everything that means, and not, is is that a response to us tolerating something for so long and it just got out of hand, or is it something that we're too sensitive to the point that it is now, we don't want to get to the place to tolerate it? I don't know. I've been trying to kind of unpack it for myself too, because it's all over
It's
the map.
so it's so timely because I had like several conversations about cancel culture in the last, I'd say, week or two, and I sort of exploded about it yesterday. Um,
Uh-oh.
Not in a bad way, but just
Okay.
like was like passionately reacting, right? And
Got it.
so here's how I'm thinking about cancel culture. And here's the challenge that I think we face with it. this may get us off, I'm sure we'll come back to tolerate, but with that thread on cancel culture, we say like, we don't want people to violate certain norms now, right? And if you do, we say, nope, goodbye, you're being canceled. You need to go and learn and educate yourself. You need to go away, right? For right now, because you need to go learn and you need to change. Okay, that's what people are saying with this cancel culture. You can't be here right now because you need to show us, show that you're sorry. And in order to be sorry, you have to go change.
Right.
Maybe I accept that, maybe I don't. But here's what's also happening, and this is the real challenge. Now, we're also facing many examples where it's not that somebody did something wrong today or in the last year or recency, but we're going back, like real far back into people's past and pointing out when they did something wrong and going, you did something wrong then, so now we're going to cancel you. And those people are like, well, hold on a second. I did do something wrong then, and so I've changed, and so I'm not doing that same thing today.
Right.
And so it's sort of like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If we want to cancel people because we want them to go and educate themselves and learn, that means we're valuing growth. And we're valuing this idea that people can change. But what I'm seeing in the media and whatnot is that we're not actually allowing people and valuing growth, because we're really valuing this like this black or white around, you're either right or you're wrong. Right. We're almost conflating, there's that idea like good people do bad things.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think Brene Brown almost touches on this when she talks a lot about, I think, the difference between guilt and shame. And I think she talks about like guilt is, I feel bad that I did something wrong. And shame is like the internalization of that, which is, I feel bad I did something wrong because I'm bad.
Right.
Like I feel bad. And so we started to conflate, there's like so many different strings, I think, in this, but it's almost like conflating an action with a person. And you and I were talking about judgment at a separate time. And like, there's that labeling of people. So we're canceling people because we're labeling the person.
Right.
Right. And we're saying, you did this bad thing. And so you're a bad person and we can't have you here.
Right.
But good people do bad things. So do we actually believe that people can change? And that brings us, if we don't, then there's this whole like prison system, right? Like you're taking accountability for actions and then are we giving you another chance? We know through biases that we don't always do that. We're still like conflating that person with that thing they did a while ago. So I don't know, there's like so much wrapped up in this cancel culture, this idea of like, does a bad thing make a bad person? Do we actually value growth and change? And I think to bring it back to tolerate, people are afraid what it says, maybe, to tolerate when somebody does something bad. Does that send the wrong message? And so we just have to sort of cast them out of society, but they're not lepers.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because and I think that has been my confusion. And I think with tolerate, we think that I'll speak for myself. Sometimes it feels like if I tolerate this, it means that I'm accepting this, and it doesn't. It's like something different. But it feels like, all right, if I tolerate that good people do bad things, then I'm accepting that. And so I'm accepting the bad things that they could possibly do again, right?
Like you're condoning the behavior.
Right. All of, and it's just like, so it's like, there's this cause and effect that there really isn't, right? There is not, I'm like, I've created this cause and effect that is really not, or may not be the case. And is that, because I believe that, within the Christian scriptures, there is, love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? And the more that I am able to have love of myself and to see myself as lovable, then I can extend that love to other people. And it feels like within this cancel culture and this, not tolerating each other and all that, it is that there's a part of ourselves that we don't accept or we don't
Yeah,
tolerate.
the imperfect part of
Right.
ourselves, right? And the
Right.
human part of ourselves is that like we can't all get it right. And there's this like, so I do a lot of work in change, right? Changing
Mhm.
organizations, changing cultures, change leadership work. And there's this law called Cantor's law, which is all change is a mess in the middle.
Hmm.
And I feel like people are tolerating the progression in the middle, right? Like we're sort of impatient and we either want to like get to the end where everyone's perfect and we fix everything, like racism is
Right.
fixed, it's gone,
Right.
right? For instance. But you have to have a path between where we are today and where we want to go.
Right.
And people aren't tolerating the process of change,
Hmm. Wow.
right?
Wow. It is that, I guess, the messy middle, right?
Yeah,
There is,
it's
and I think,
uncomfortable.
right. It's that that social media, how social media serves to occurs to a lot of people,
Mhm.
is that the highlight reel, right? It's like you either get people on that have this curated life that is just like, oh my god, this is just
Yeah, it's
it is
perfection.
that is I want to live that life. They're not even living that life, right? I mean,
Not every day.
right.
And they're working really hard to get there and they're not showing that. So people, I see this a lot with my clients. I help them try and create a change in their life.
Right.
But the dirty little secret is like change isn't easy and it takes a long time of consistent effort. And
Right.
we have this impatience of, okay, figure out where I want to go. I tried for a month and like I'm not there yet. And I just give up. Right. Not to say my
Right.
clients, give up that easily, right? But there's a
Right.
mentality, I think, amongst culture that, well, we should be there. And I see this a lot when I also work with organizations now too,
Right.
in the sense that I love that we're trying to hold everyone accountable for the things that you and I, William, know have been wrong for a very long time. And
Absolutely.
we've tolerated as a society, like the status quo. And now we sort of identified that we want to make changes. And companies are trying to do it, but it's a new
Right.
muscle for them, right? Like it's a
Right.
new skill. And we become intolerant that change isn't happening quick enough, or that's not a big enough change,
Right.
right? And that's also not helpful
Right.
because how are we going to get from here to there?
Right.
That's like the beauty of life, right? Like is the
Right.
journey. That's how where change happens. All of it happens in that middle.
Right.
And
And
so, yeah.
no, I just really, I really got something for myself, that there is this for myself. I say things that I don't want, overnight success or
Mhm.
this quick success or whatever results of something. But
Yeah,
at
I'm
the
feeling you on
same
this.
but the same time, there is this, it's like this demand that I put on my life and the people
Mhm.
around me to kind of get it right now, right?
Oh yeah.
You know.
I tell myself the same false story. I'm okay if this takes 5 years. But I'm like, but it'd be great if it happened now.
Right,
Like,
right, right.
I don't
It's
want to be a million. I don't need to be a millionaire. I do this work because I love it. But yeah, I wouldn't mind being a millionaire. Like that would be nice
right,
too. Yeah, I mean, we're impatient, and it's because like external factors, right? What are we
right,
seeing? If all we saw was everyone else struggling right along the way, and what we saw
right,
is like, okay, that person's there, but I've been watching them struggle for like 20 years. So if I put in 20 years, I could do that too. That's like a better goal in a
right,
mindset than seeing someone get there and be like, I want to be like that, and not understanding
right,
the journey it took for them to get there.
right. It is. I just realized there is so many places that, like I said, that I expect for myself and I expect for
Mhm,
other people to like get it right the first time, right?
mhm,
There's especially around race, especially around gender equality, and just there's a lot of things that people are trying to figure out. you
And
know,
we forget that we've had a head start, right? Like you and I have lived this life of not being in the majority.
right.
And so the conversations happening around my dinner table were very different than my next door neighbors, right? Who had a
Mm,
very different background. And so, I mean, I'm absolutely guilty of this. Just yesterday, I was being very impatient with someone on Instagram and comments about, this whole Harry and Meghan Markle interview and the inquiry about their impending mixed child's color of their skin. And I just
right,
lost it. And I was
right,
like, why don't you understand that's not an okay question? Right? Like, I'm telling you from experience, that's offensive, and you're still questioning it.
right,
And I don't understand that. But our journeys are different.
right,
It's easier for me to understand because I'm primed. It's like the sixth sense. I see racism everywhere, right? Because I'm
right,
primed for it. But
right.
to someone else, they're using new muscles, new lenses. It's like when I got bifocals and I was like not adjusting to them very well at first. It takes
Right.
time.
Right. It's kind of it's interesting that you said, the sixth sense, that I see racism everywhere. That's what came up for me when you said that. It's like we've been almost programmed for our survival to see it, you know.
And we have the language for it
Right.
because I only recently took a training on microaggressions.
Hmm.
And I've lived a whole life filled with receiving microaggressions. As a mixed race person, they're everywhere. But I never had the language for it or the understanding that this was a thing. And
Right.
my experience had a name for it. And it actually was not great, like bad, if I could put a label on it.
Right.
But until I had that language and that education to sort of to put with my gut, I didn't really see it everywhere the way that I do now. Now I can spot a microaggression like that, right?
Right.
But it's because I have the experience plus the education and the language to describe it. So now I can see it. And so we're not, we tell people like go and get educated because yeah, it's not my job
Right.
to educate the whole world and it's exhausting. But like people do need to be educated and that takes time. And if
Right.
they don't have that education, then I'm, it's not like I'm tolerating bad behavior by giving them the grace. I'm tolerating this fact that we have different experiences and that people need to catch up. And I have
Right.
to tolerate that moment of change, that in between, that messiness that we don't want to tolerate that time.
Right. It's I have a conversation around labels and living beyond our
Mhm.
labels. Um,
Yes.
and um, there's a part of me that like resisted that conversation because of some of the conversations that I was having with people that I love.
Hmm.
And they were saying that I was letting people off the hook for how they were showing up under that particular label, right?
Hmm.
I would say things that, I am not my black label. They are not their white label.
Hmm.
They are, there is a person beyond that. There is
Right.
inviting them to show up as a human being, or just not stay there. And there was this sense of, you know, these labels. It sounds kind of cute and kind of, I get it, but there's a lot of horrible things that when people show up a certain way, right? And how they don't tolerate each other, or they have no listening for. And I say that labels will defend labels, and people will defend people. And it's like the more that we get to the people, the human beings, then we can care for each other. But as long as we operate under the labels, they're gonna they're gonna stand up for their label, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Or in against the label, right?
Or
Because
against
the
another
other
label, right?
conversation that I've been having and I've been playing around with my head is I don't know if I'm getting in trouble with this, like the label of racist is not helpful to the
Right.
conversation.
Hmm.
As soon as people hear the word racist, they cannot distinguish between me describing an action and a person.
Right.
And nobody wants the label of a racist person.
Right.
And it immediately shuts down any conversation or progress because
Right.
they're defending now against a label as opposed to us having a conversation about the behavior. I think
Right.
it's easier for people to have a conversation and accept that behavior was
Right.
hurtful and it's not okay.
Right.
But as soon as you throw that label racist in there, all hell breaks loose.
Right.
And so we have to remove throwing around that label so that we can actually have productive conversation. Or we need a new label that doesn't come with all this baggage and negative energy around it.
Right. And this is one of the regrets that I have from within this show, and
Mhm.
I had a conversation with my guests after it, but within the conversation like this, and it was like she brought it up, so I was like,
Mhm.
she asked for it, right?
Right. Where's this going?
Yeah, well, I we were talking about racist. I'm trying to remember the word,
Mhm.
but it's just not coming up. But what I said to her is
Mhm.
I said to a non-person of color that
Mhm.
you're just going to have to face the fact that you're a racist, but you're not a practicing racist. And
Mhm.
and I think
How did that
if
go?
oh, it didn't go over well, right? It's like I just can't take that, and it's like, oh no, I totally understand because it's designed to like stop you in your tracks, and it means a lot of other things. But I think what I was trying to say, and I didn't say it in that moment, was that just the construct of race, there is in my mind there is a winner and there's a loser, right? There is,
Mm.
there is this, it was designed for someone to kind of set each other apart.
Right.
And that anytime we operate in, it's not just seeing
Mhm.
race, it's how the activities, like you said, if you
Mhm.
are doing things that because of my race, you are making it difficult for me to live my life. And
Mhm.
that is, now there's a behavior that is causing something else. I
Mhm.
believe that there are more people who are racially insensitive than racist, but nobody wants to
Mhm.
have that conversation.
Yeah.
But how we
It's because they're
can,
afraid they're going to be put in that box of
right, because
racist.
it's
If
too
that was taken
close.
off the table,
Right,
people might be able to accept that, right? This word just shuts down all conversations. And it's not that I don't want to use it because I want to tolerate
right,
that racist behavior.
right,
I just want us to move forward. And we're
right,
not moving forward. We're not making any progress.
right.
We're
It's like,
polarizing.
right. It's like Dr. Phil, how's that working for you? Right. It's like
Right.
it's not. We know that it's
No.
not, but we continue to do this over and
Right.
over.
And why is it okay for, when I was going back and forth in this Instagram comment board, they were like, okay, it's a microaggression, but is that racist? And I said, I'm not your God. It's not for me to decide or to
Right,
judge you or to label you.
right,
I'm talking about the behavior, which maybe I
right,
don't have a right to judge even a behavior, but I was
right,
like, but I'm not trying to label you as a person. That's
right,
not for me to decide. I don't know you. I'm
right,
just saying this behavior, doesn't matter who you are, is
right,
not an okay behavior because of X, Y, and Z.
right,
And even if I didn't give you X, Y, and Z, I'm telling you that behavior hurt me. So that should just be full stop.
right. And it's like, and I think really, and I think really, it comes back to, and I don't know how we've kind of, coupled these two together.
Mhm.
That to tolerate means to accept, and I don't think
Yes.
that was in. I don't think that was in the definition, right?
No, but it's not in the definition. It's like, it's the why, right?
Hmm,
It's just like, oh, I'm accepting something that I don't like. But we're accepting something that we don't like because of
right,
whatever. And so I'm willing to tolerate some things right now if it means that we're going to make progress.
Right.
I'm willing to, get rid of the word racist and not use it and tolerate, like, do I think people should be able to be told like they did something bad and be okay with it? Yeah.
Right.
Do I think I should be able to tell someone like that's racist and have them not freak out? Yes, I do. But it's not the reality. So
Right.
I can keep just pushing and
Right.
saying, you should change. And they're like, no, you should change. And that's not moving us forward. Or I can tolerate, okay, we're not going to use this word because you're not at a place where that's going to be helpful. And so I'm going to tolerate it because it's going to get us to our long-term objective, right? I'm going to stay in this place that I don't like, this company culture that makes me feel inferior because
Right.
I'm collecting lots of money right now and I'm going to go pay for grad school,
Right.
right? I'm
Yeah.
going to stay here because I am the sole breadwinner of my family and I need to
Right.
put food on the table. And this is the highest paying job right now. And if I
Right.
could do this for another 5 years, then I might be able to go somewhere else. But
Right.
those are all choices, and that's okay. But we don't talk about why we're
Right.
tolerating things.
Right. I think there's something that comes up from, the one of the U cards that I picked up that
Mm-hmm.
that I am heard. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there is sometimes I tolerate things because I don't feel that I'm heard. People or
Yes.
either understood within that. So it's just like, you know what? What's what's the point? I'm not going to like have this conversation here.
Right, because it's not going to get us anywhere, right? And
Right.
that goes back to that conversation I was having, with my coaching clients, which is like, okay, are you going to be able to change this company's culture? Did they hire you to do that?
Right.
Did anyone ask to change the culture?
Right.
If not, you may have to tolerate it
Right.
because otherwise you're just going to keep feeling that resistance every day of like, I hate
Right.
this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. If you sort
Right.
of accept it and go, I'm accepting it now because I think maybe I can make some change in the future if I can establish myself as a high performing employee right now, as a trusted
Right.
person, then maybe someone will listen to me
Right.
later. That's a choice.
There is there's this thing, it's mainly in fitness, no pain, no gain. I think people I think it's a part of because it's definitely been a part of my psyche and not
Mhm.
even, that agreement without, speaking
Mhm.
that feels like, okay, there's a discomfort here and there's shit I got to deal with. So
Mhm.
that must mean, that
Yeah.
there's a reward on the end of this struggle,
Right.
and
But you have to
so
tolerate it in the
right,
meantime, the pain, right?
right,
I the same thing. I for years could like not get back into working out. Like couldn't really just find a thing or find a groove. And finally one day I realized it's because I wasn't willing to tolerate like the discomfort and like sweating,
right,
right? That
right,
comes. Quite frankly, like I just was like, I'm resisting sweating.
right,
And so I'm not making any progress and I'm giving up when things get hard because I'm not willing to tolerate that discomfort. And as soon as I recognized that, I was like, well, that's silly. I think I can do 20 minutes of discomfort if it means I'm going to build my muscles and get to where I want to go.
right,
But there's an acknowledgement. You have to, that invisible hand needs to be named at a certain point and saying like, what
right.
does it look like I'm valuing here? And is that what I actually value?
Yeah, I'm trying to look at some areas of our society and
Mhm.
of the collective. What is that push to get us to the point that, okay, that's silly. We need to do something different. And it's not shame and blame. I don't
No,
think shame and blame has never caused someone to change. Or
at
if it
least not in the
did,
long
it's
run.
right, the long run. Yeah, it's not a long term because
Yeah.
then there's a level of resentment underneath that,
Hmm.
change, right?
Yeah. It's not authentic.
Right,
It's an extrinsic motivation, which is as soon as that goes away, they revert back to the original behavior.
right. And it might be even worse because it's kind of picked up some
Hmm.
noun, you know, um, I don't want to say hiding skills or something. I mean, look,
Yeah. Or that
I,
resentment that you talked about.
it is something, like I said, the inquiry for me, and that
Hmm.
it's really just sitting with me, is that there is this, what am what am I not accepting in my life? What do I feel that I have connected, tolerating and accepting, that is causing me to have no movement on it, not be willing to go through what could be the messy process, of it.
Yeah.
And because there is that, there is a, I don't want to say there's a good part of tolerating and then there's a bad part. And
I
when
think that's
is,
true.
where is that? When does with so taking out the good and bad, taking out,
Hmm.
when can tolerate work for me and then not work for me?
Yeah.
When
How is
does
it
it tip
serving you?
over? Right.
What
When,
what
yeah,
purpose is it serving? And is that more or less valuable to me than
right.
the alternative?
Is
And
that
that's what it
some
comes down to.
right? Is that something that when it no longer works for me, I lose the why? Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
recognize that I don't have the why, then it's no longer working
Yeah.
for me.
I just had a client we just wrapped up, and the end, she was in this job that we called like a toxic work environment, right? She
Mm.
was tolerating it for a while. And then
Right.
she finally got to the point and she was asking, why am I tolerating? Right. And she finally realized, like, this is no longer serving me because
Right.
I don't need to stay here and collect the money because I have a support system that I can afford to leave this job before looking for the next job. Right.
Right.
It's not allowing me to look for the next job because I'm so stressed. Right.
Right.
And, you know, it's not going to get better. Right. So she just sort of did all these calculations and he said, what am I tolerating this for? And at
Mm.
one point, there was an answer to that, right? And there were things, but she
Right.
got to a point where it was no longer serving her.
Right.
And she was no longer getting something out of it in the end. And that's when it becomes, okay, tomorrow I'm going to quit my job.
Right.
I'm no longer tolerating this. It's no longer serving me. And it's no longer, I don't want to say means to an end because it's sort of Machiavellian, but
Right.
works in this case.
Right. Here's the
Hmm.
here's the thing that just came up as we're kind of winding down, or kind of
Yeah.
just ongoing to something, is that sometimes in those moments of, I don't know what this is what just came up, I'm mad as
Yeah.
hell and I'm not going to take this anymore, right? That
Yeah.
moment, right?
Yeah. It's a
um
straw that breaks the camel's back.
right. There is this sense that, I don't want to be seen as being selfish, right, or
Hmm.
or all the things that we say. I think the immature things we are understanding around self. But if we
Hmm.
don't take care of ourselves, if we are not aware of ourselves, we cannot show up for ourselves or others. And
Right.
so how can, and so I guess the question that's coming up for me
Mhm.
is, how can I really not torpedo my um what serves me, right? What's in support of me, with the things that I tolerate or don't tolerate. I don't know if the
Yeah.
question came out in there, but it just
Well,
feels
I'm
like,
hearing that question about self-awareness, right? Like it
right,
starts with self-awareness and knowing thyself. It starts
right,
with what is most important to me? Like what are the
right,
fundamental things that are driving whether I feel good or bad about situations or I'm happy or fulfilled? I think that starts with your values.
right,
And then asking yourself, why am I tolerating this? Not in the like, why am I, but like, honestly, like, why am I tolerating this? What am I getting out of this? And then
right,
we may answer that. And I think sometimes where I think the immature behavior comes in is like we don't actually pressure test that because we
mm,
make up stories in our heads, right? This is how we view the world. So we'll say like, well, I need this job. And you go,
mm,
okay, well, why do you need this job? Right. And that's where like the coaching comes in, right? You push people to sort of
right,
uncover the different layers and it's like, well, because I can't get a new job. Well, is that true? Right. And then all of a
mm,
sudden, like that why is actually not a why anymore. So we
right,
pull that apart. But maybe there's another reason. Be like, well, I'm actually, I have a boss who supports me and says to help me, develop all these skills. Okay.
Right.
So is it worth it to do it for another 6 months, like gather those skills, and then is that, let's go back to your values, like you
Right.
value personal development. So that might be worth it,
Right.
right? But everyone has to make this assessment for themselves, and it's going to be different for every person. What I'm
Right.
willing to tolerate may be different than what you're willing to tolerate because we value different things.
Right.
It's not for me to decide what you should or shouldn't tolerate. It's just a
Right.
conversation each of us needs to have with ourselves.
Right. And really being connected to that why,
Mm-hmm.
I love
Yeah.
that stress tests, that, well, that's what I heard, just kind of
Yeah.
just really putting, test was one of the words, I think last week or the week before. And it's not right or wrong. It's just getting information, right?
Yeah.
Testing,
Mm-hmm.
you're just getting information.
Yeah. The most powerful
Um,
question is why.
right.
I
Right.
think the military uses this technique called 5 whys. And they
Mm,
go, what happened? This. Why did it happen? Well, because of this. Why did that happen? Because of this. And
right.
they do it like 5 levels down to really get to the root cause.
Right. And so that can show up in how we're showing up.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can talk about this for hours.
Yes. We always, I love our conversations because we just, they're so yummy in terms of like the content that we get to and the questions that we pose. So I love this.
yeah,
But yeah, we don't want to go on and on too long for people.
yeah. It's just so. Is there anything that you would want to leave everyone with on tolerate, and just kind of, everybody wants something simple and easy and practical and actionable, or or something, but is there anything within this conversation that can bottom line it for people?
I think it's just getting curious. I think
Mm,
curiosity can solve a lot for us,
mm,
and being open to rethinking things,
mm.
right? And I'm happy to rethink anything that I've said today
Right.
because, I could be wrong. But these are just my thoughts and my instincts and, what I've learned so far. But I'm curious how other people think about it. And I think we just need to start with why.
Right.
Why are we doing this? Why do you think that? Where are you coming from? And
Right.
those may be easier conversations.
It's like, for me, I totally get that. It's like, I do need to tolerate things, and I don't.
Hmm.
Right. And it's
Yeah.
both are true, right? Like,
Yep. The hard part is deciphering which do I need to tolerate and
right,
which do I not need to tolerate.
right,
And we should be questioning and pressure testing those constantly in case they
right,
change.
right. I guess I was resisting pressure. I called it stress, but now
For
I think,
stress test, yeah, that's the same thing. Pressure
yeah,
test, stress
it's the
test.
same thing, but pressure shows up to me totally different than stress.
Okay.
You know,
Use the
so
term that feels good to you.
right. I know I just, and I became aware of that. I was like, I changed it to stress because I have a problem with pressure, right?
Yeah,
Don't
I don't
pressure
like
me.
pressure either. 10 pressure, no.
Right.
It's a
So
whole nother conversation.
that's a whole nother conversation.
Next
Well,
time, next time.
thank you very much. This has been great. I appreciate you being a part of this conversation.
Thank you. It's been really enjoyable. And yeah, I hope we both learned something. And I hope whoever's watching also learned something too. And they have some thoughts and feelings.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jess. Oh, tolerate. I think there's a number of things. Many times when I'm in the within the conversation, and there's like, okay, I need to take note of that, and I need to take note of that. But the one thing that really stood out to me, it was early part of a conversation, is about the connection to our values. What I am valuing, my why, will, I guess, determine how tolerate shows up and how it unfolds in my life and in my relationship to tolerate. And so, yeah, there are some things that we should tolerate, and there's some things that I should not tolerate. And our values and our why is a big indication. I don't know. It doesn't sound like right. It will help you, right? Figure out which one is important. So I hope this conversation has been of value to you, not just to your day, but to your life. I invite you to reach out to me at imwilliambrown.com for a complimentary coaching session to help you be yourself and live your life. Because the world wants you, the world needs you, but the world isn't waiting for you. So go be you. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you next time on One Word Conversation.